position, which you're applying for. There were
correct.
5 write-ins, and there were 4 for Mr. Trey, total of 9 votes.
If I'm correct, it was an open spot on the ballot.
Yeah, there was nobody running,
Nobody was running.
from what
So,
I understand.
so some
I'm
people
trying
got
to-
together.
I'm trying to think back myself.
Yeah, I was there. So some
According
people
to
got
this, so
together
there's a
and
write-in,
as
but
a
then
joke.
there's a Republican, which is Mr. Trey. He received 4 of the votes. The write-ins were 5 votes. I have the results here if you need.
Okay, yeah, so I do remember something about it, and I think that's where nobody was on the ballot. So you can go, whenever you show up, you can just write anybody's name you want. And I
Correct.
believe that, I think that's something we spoke about was, Mr. Trey initially saying he didn't want the position. He was upset that he had gotten written in. And I think it was something about, I don't wanna say it was a joke, but it was kind of a joke. I don't think he really thought he was gonna get elected. I don't even believe Billy was at the poll when it happened.
Okay.
How did I get that voter turnout? So Mr. Frisco is the Republican chair, and he has ability to get voters out, that's what they do. Less Democratic guy, he can do the same thing, they mail out, I don't know if it's per se them themselves, but they mail out, recommendations on candidates. And that turns out the vote, so they can turn it up, if they wanna hit all number 1 voters, they put them out there, and those guys are loyal, they come out and vote. I'm not gonna take credit for it, but as I said, there's 30-some hundred homes in Upper Frederick, and I think I hit 3,300 doors, knocking on doors, just talking to people, you know what I mean? Leaving flyers, stuff like that. And just basically showing an interest in our township and telling everybody what we had and what was coming, what was perceived to be coming. And I'm not rich from playing the lottery, but a lot of the things I said that were coming, we're looking at today. They're here. So I believe that's how it is. I just knocked on doors, talked to folks, and these gentlemen here got organized. Democrats and Republicans got organized in our town. So I believe that's what it is.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Mr. Benzak, I read actually a really nice article about you when you left Abington and you moved here to live out your dream. Where are you? Hi. You lived out your dream here. You wanted to live on a farm, and that was part of your dream. So I actually have 2 questions for you, and one I think you may have answered when you presented. Thinking of the reasons why you moved here, what is your position on high-density housing, which you did talk a little bit about, and then the second one is why the supervisor position instead of a treasurer position, since your background seems to be in financial advisement and brokerage?
Well, Nicole, first I'd like to say thank you. You are more prepared than anybody in this room. The first thing, we moved out here, we lived in an R4 in Abington in a high-density area. At some point, we were sitting in our house, and Carolyn, my wife, looked out, and we saw about 25 houses just out one window. So we knew we had to move somewhere, so that's when we picked up the property here on Swiftman Road, and we live now, so, and we enjoy it very much. The second question, I wasn't a commissioner is very similar to a supervisor.
Okay.
They're relatively the same thing, it just depends on what municipality you work for. I do enough finance during the day, I don't want to do any more finance.
I can look at that.
Is that good enough?
Yes, but your position on high-density housing,
High
just to
density.
clarify?
Oh, to limit high-density housing as much as possible.
Okay,
Yeah.
I heard you talk about it in your presentation, I just wanted to make sure, 'cause-
Yeah, we have to hold the developers, we have to hold the line, and we have to protect, go after the developers, and to reduce the amount of houses, because remember, there's effect on traffic, there's effect on our schools, there's effect on our water, on the sewer
Everything.
system. It really, so anytime we can make that density a little bit less, I think we all benefit from that.
okay. And I will say, I did watch, there was YouTube videos of some of the meetings, and I saw the one where Mr. Hendricks spoke, and I get that he wants to put these here, but maybe he should pay his taxes first, because on our website, he is delinquent on all of his properties. So he owes us over $5,000, but we'll save that for another day. We are here for the supervisor position. So, Mr. Myers, I have a question for you too, and it's very simple. Are you related to or affiliated with Ross Myers of Allen Myers Construction? That's it. That was my question for you. I'm happy to hear there is no relation. Mr. Ross Myers does own a lot of parcels here in Montgomery County and has provided donations to Mr. Frisco, and I felt that would be a conflict. So I have no problem, no conflict with. Thank you. Those were my questions.
Okay, who's next? Who's got questions? Who wants to go? So go ahead.
Tracy, you looking for an assistant to the assistant? Might be a good pickup.
I just got a question for Tom, and it's all about optics. You're Chief 308, you run the Plymouth Ambulance or Ambulance Company, and back on March 11th of 21, if you can recall, you were in a township meeting here. We were discussing reallocating the EMS tax back to the fire company, where it originally was. Do you remember that meeting? And do you remember what you said at that meeting? Because I do. You said, how about we leave our money alone and give the fire company their own tax? So now you want to be a supervisor, and if this development goes in, a lot more people, that kind of is going to benefit your company a lot, won't it? You'll get more calls, more money, more billing. I mean, you do bill for your calls, right?
That's how I'll.
And you get your tax money from your calls. Okay, so with all this increase in population, that directly affects your company financially, correct? And you want to sit on the board that can guide our taxes to be spent on maybe a substation? Would you need one of them with all this development? Because I guess the fire company's gonna need some kind of increase, they're not gonna have room to house you at our station, so you're gonna need your own station up here? These are things that if you're sitting on the board of supervisors, you have direct input in. So I don't see that as, you know, being totally transparent and with nothing to gain. If I was you, I would withdraw from the running. That's all I say.
Okay. Questions? Who's next? Anybody?
Yeah. Hi, my name is William Worrell. I live on Perkins Road, 1036. Been there for 4 years. I want to know how the residents of this township can believe the most qualified and appropriate candidate can be appointed by this group, given the apparent contentious relationships with some of the candidates.
Is this a question for the candidates?
No, really.
We're not taking those questions right now, are we?
Why not?
Are we gonna do them later?
Public comment?
Public comment. You wanna do public comment?
Is that not what that is?
We're at the spot here where we're talking.
All right, well, I can put that off for a few minutes and come back to it if you want.
Well, why don't you just continue with this? All right.
Okay. Then you can answer that.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
How can we, the residents of this township, believe the most qualified and appropriate candidate will be given the opportunity, given the contentious relationship with many of them?
It is a responsibility of this role. It's what we do
Okay.
as township supervisor.
And
We've been elected.
responsibility for that role would have been to take action prior to 8 months of someone not attending a meeting, would it not?
No, not necessarily. I don't know if it's appropriate for you to ask questions. Now is the time to ask questions of the candidates. Why don't we save
Well,
this
this
to
all
public
comes
comment
together.
at the end? Well, ask questions of the candidates now. You can
All
make
right,
your
well,
opinion
I don't have a question
at the
for a
end.
candidate, I want to show support for candidates.
You may be misinformed about what happens when a township
No.
supervisor doesn't attend meetings. It's very difficult.
I've heard everything you've said the last few meetings.
It wasn't at the last few meetings, there was one meeting, and I
Yeah,
actually
last meeting I was here.
misspoke. The 3-month period is actually, it's really not anything. There have been townships that
He
are
hasn't been here
unable.
since May 12th. Someone explain to me how that's appropriate when you just ran an election in November.
My understanding was July, first time.
It's not on the minutes then.
Well, you know, I was here, that's what I distinctly recall. Last meeting you attended was
I'm
in
going
July.
to check the minutes, because that's the
And
official.
secondly, yeah,
record.
believe it or not, it is very difficult to remove a township supervisor. There have been townships that have tried to impose rules like if you miss a certain number of meetings, you can be disqualified from running. There have been people, other townships have said, if you miss a number of meetings, you don't get the stipend
All right,
that you're
Mr.
otherwise
Trey is
entitled to.
Republican, correct?
All right,
You're
but
the head of the
there's-
Republican
there's-
committee, correct? Why would you allow him to run? It's silly. He hasn't been here. It just seems like all this could have been resolved in November. And now it's left to a board that has a contentious relationship with a number of candidates to make that decision. That's just not
Well,
fair.
that's a different issue. You talked about why did they wait, a number of months to do anything. The fact of the matter is it's very difficult to remove a township supervisor. The only way to do it is based on what the Pennsylvania State Constitution
Right,
says.
I read the handbook.
Written in like
Got it.
1980 something. You have to have 2/3 impeached, by the Pennsylvania Senate, get 2/3. I'm not even aware of that proceeding ever taking place. I can't imagine how long that would take. But I just want you, if you're gonna, accuse or ask questions, you need to understand
I still haven't gotten any answers. I
that the
just gave
3
you.
months or the 6-month period is not something that automatically entitles this board to ask
All
or
right,
demand his
you're
removal.
not gonna answer the questions, doesn't matter. I just wish to show my support for the gentleman who apparently lost his seat by 10 votes in November to someone who hadn't attended a meeting in 8 months. Mr. Landman, thank you.
I appreciate it.
Were you trying to imply that there's a conflict between the two
Yes.
individuals that are going to be voting on this position?
Yep.
Not necessarily the amount of time that
Obviously
went by?
contentious.
Yeah.
It's
So-
already contentious.
I don't think
They're
you
not gonna
heard
be
your
agreed.
question.
Okay, so I'm not talking about the time frame when
Right.
Mr. Trey didn't show up. I'm asking about Mr. Frisco and Mr. DeFrancisco. Are you saying there's a conflict between them voting?
Was it
On
not
one of
obvious
the
when
four-
Mr. Landman was up there? He went over a little bit of it.
So
Still
they
think
can't be
he's missing
impartial
your
for?
question. The question is there contention between these two gentlemen or between one or two of these gentlemen and
And a
one of the
candidate.
candidates?
There's definitely contention between one of them and a candidate. I couldn't tell you about both.
Okay, does that answer
I
your
haven't
question?
heard the vote.
I didn't understand him to say contention among
It
these.
doesn't sound like there's a conflict of interest for them to make this decision, both of them, based on their relationships with the 4 candidates. Is that what I'm hearing?
There's only one candidate I don't know, and
Okay. So, okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Hi, I just have a quick comment, just a comment. My name's Judy Bieberfeld. I live on BoS Road for 26 years now. And as a longtime resident, taxpayer, voter, I think that it would be in everybody's best interest, especially people in on the board in Upper Frederick Township, that they don't appoint a supervisor that has any kind of financial arrangement with the township as far as a vendor, an employee, any kind of thing like that. That's my comment, thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Is this public comment now?
No, we're still
Okay.
going through
that's
questions.
a minute.
I would like to say, I don't have a problem working with either one of you. Like I said, my business is for the township. As I said numerous times, I harbor no ill will towards either one of you. You know what I mean? I still have your phone number showing on my phone. I don't have a problem with that.
I'm just disappointed you didn't knock on my door.
I was going to. I was you know what I mean? No. I backed away after the 2021 election, and I didn't come to some of these meetings and view them online because it was so contentious. It was only contentious one way. For me, it was never about that. For me, it was always this. As I'm sitting here talking civilized to you now, this is how I work with you, the same manner. Okay.
before you go to public comment, I was just gonna suggest that maybe the two of you take a look at these, questions that they were supposed to answer, many of them
Right.
did. But,
Just
to
to
me,
revisit them.
and again, the folks, I don't generally, but kind of what they do for a living and their availability time-wise, things like that. And there are some demands on township supervisors, so somebody who works maybe in Philly, may not be able to. Those are just additional things you might want to consider. But look through this list and maybe ask each one of them if you have any doubt about any of those sort of qualifications. Like, I think one or two said they intend to run, but I don't know if everyone did. Again, just, the list was put together to make sure we sort of have the
Right.
same information about everybody, so I just put it out there like that.
Okay. All right, I think everybody's addressed.
I mean, answer that, Sean, I'll answer that. So what I do right now is I integrate CCTV systems, and I do cybersecurity for local businesses. Right now, I'm currently working with Boyertown Rescue Squad over there, implementing things into their server and whatnot. So my work carries me throughout Bucks County, Montgomery County. I'm always home. I have 2 small kids, and I have to be home for them as well. So yeah, I could fully intend to run it, and I have plenty of time to do the job. Unfortunately, I'm no longer flying around the world.
You ran before, I'm assuming you have a pretty good idea what the job.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And some days it's absolutely nothing, and maybe weeks, but other times it's kind of demanding.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Let's start with this. So if you fill this vacancy, would you want to continue and run for the position in the future? Let me see a show of hands. Who's in, who's out? Bill?
It's all.
Everybody's in, okay. Got how long everybody's lived in the township. So attendance at meetings. How long have you guys been attending these meetings?
I don't know, mine's public document, goes back 2-3 years.
Okay.
As I said, I backed away because, if I'm gonna bring contentiousness here, this was not my,
You're a resident,
yeah,
should be here.
Right. I'm just trying to get a feel for how.
yeah.
Well, this is part of the problem. I mean, the
Right.
agenda, when you look at the agenda, it really doesn't have it. This is part of the outreach to residents that you need to make and make it a little bit more appealing. If you look at the agenda, you don't get an idea of what's going on, and then you have to wait 2 months to find out what's on the agenda. So I think there's a way that you and could make it better so more people would attend, because I think this is gonna be the new normal, what we see in this room right now.
Okay.
I hope so.
Absolutely. No, yeah, because we don't have the attendance that, this is unusual. Okay.
I attended while Clover Meadows was going in, and at the time, we got right up to almost where they started construction, and we had 3 kids in college at the same time, so we were really stretched time-wise, so we missed a couple meetings, and an emergency road all of a sudden turned into a full-blown road right behind our house, and then sand mounds. I feel like we're in a Viking graveyard. And my neighbor has a mound that's closer to my well than my sand mound. So I was kind of upset by that and didn't like the process. And so if I would run on the ground that, we have to protect, as development comes in, we have to protect the residents.
No, 100%. I mean, look, I think everybody here in the room doesn't want the township to be overdeveloped, right?
Yes.
Is there anybody here who wants a lot of development in the town? Raise your hand. Yeah,
Go
nobody.
live in Limerick.
Limerick, New Hanover, Gilbert.
That is one thing I said about managed growth. One of my slogans was, you can't stop progress, but as a community, we can dictate what the progress looks like. And it's about
Everything we do
You
managing.
affects
want to
us.
limit the impact,
Oh,
is
absolutely.
what you want to do.
Okay.
You can never stop it, but you can try to limit it.
Okay, so I touched on this a little bit. Serving our community here. Has anybody, I don't know, helped with Parks and Rec or anything like
The
that?
Christmas tree.
The Christmas tree.
We donated the Christmas tree.
Okay.
And we've financially supported the stomp, community days, and that's when we had our business here, so it was, we've participated, and, you know, we'll continue. So.
Okay, all right.
I do think Mr. Trojansky wins on that, though. I think that the ambulance is a huge support to our community. You know, I think a lot of residents depend on that in times of illness and
Right.
injury and whatnot, so.
Okay. Dave, go ahead.
Dave Garlish again. In my medical career, the first 8 years of my career was involved in EMS as a paramedic. And that's long enough ago that now I'm a dinosaur in the paramedic business. So, and I think the general public, as Mr. Trojansky pointed out, really has no clue as to what's involved in the EMS service. And the day after Thanksgiving, when my wife had chest pains, she had a heart attack many years ago, the first thing I did, besides arguing with her why we were going to call the ambulance, was call the ambulance. And Plymouth Ambulance showed up, and he did the right thing. So, you have to, when I was involved in EMS, it was all volunteer. So, and it was with a very busy squad in the eastern end of the county. So, it's a difficult job, and with as much territory as Mr. Trojansky manages, I certainly think he's qualified to be a township supervisor and understand all the ins and outs of what goes on.
Okay. Good, thank you. Les, you were the minority inspector of elections. You got elected. Are you still serving in that seat? Or did you resign from it?
We had a replacement, that we couldn't find anybody to run for that seat, so I ran for that seat, and as soon as we found a replacement, there is a minority inspector in place. So yes.
Okay. All right, yeah, I didn't know if you were, because I thought you were in there in the primary of primary of 22, and then not there in the general, correct?
Well, nobody's on the ballot for the inspector of elections.
No, I mean, sir, Dave, who was in there?
Right here, she's right here, Joan.
Joan.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Let me double check. Okay.
And Les was the minority inspector in the 2022 primary.
Okay. All right. Okay, this is a question for everybody. How do you anticipate yourself working with the management staff, road crew, and emergency services throughout the township? Who wants to go first? Les, why don't you go first?
Well, I mean, it's about setting priorities. Once you have the priorities set, working with the road crew, I'm gonna help them in my capacity as much as they can and persuade my colleagues to make sure we get done what needs to get done within the budget. I have no, I manage 3 people right now in my business, and I'm self-employed, so I have no problem with managing other people.